Hello, my name is Johan Aguilar, and I'm here to talk about hiring of illegal workers in the business world. Humberto Garcia sits on a fence overlooking his large cotton field. He spits out a wad of tobacco and looks out onto the field that once brought him large profits each season. He says, now that they started raiding our businesses, looking for undocumented workers, we cannot hire them anymore. He comments, I can either raise my prices to reflect my new labor costs or start to lose a lot of my profit, or close down the business. Garcia's attitude reflects that of many business owners who for years have relied on undocumented workers to keep their labor costs down and their profits up. Businesses make their profits by controlling their costs. One of the major costs that every business must pay is labor costs. So many businesses have resorted to hiring some of nearly 10 million undocumented workers in the United States. Because of the nature of undocumented migration and undocumented people who try not to be discovered, it is difficult to qualify the phenomena and to pinpoint how many undocumented people are actually employed. However, government figures estimate that there are 6 million undocumented people in the U.S. workforce, representing about 5% of the total workforce. Despite the fact that it is common to hire undocumented workers in many industries such as construction, textiles, and gardening, there are many ethical and legal issues which must be considered in deciding whether or not to control costs by hiring undocumented workers. The legal issues include that it is illegal to hire undocumented workers, and the penalties for getting caught employing undocumented workers are fines and imprisonment. The hiring of undocumented workers often means participating in other illegal activities, such as falsifying documents and social security numbers. There are many local and county laws against hiring undocumented workers. While the nation as a whole do not have an integrated immigration policy, employers who hire undocumented people can be fined and barred from getting licenses they need to operate their business. The fines can range from a few hundred to a few $1,000s per undocumented worker found working at the company. Business owners might also face prison time. Since 2006, there have been a voluntary program through which business can get certified. This means they go through a process which teaches them how to detect falsified documents in exchange for going through a certification. The government promises not to raid the certified businesses. There are also ethical issues that must be considered. Hiring undocumented workers may take jobs away from legal residents and citizens, thus increasing poverty among the lower social classes and ethnic minorities. Undocumented people are human beings just like the rest of us, and as such should have a right to earn a living. The wages paid to undocumented people are usually less than those paid to documented workers, but they are much higher than the wages the worker should earn in his or her home country. The precarious situation of being undocumented could lead to the vulnerability to many forms of abuse, including modern-day slavery. Contrary to urban myths, undocumented workers are not often paid below the minimum wage. However, they are usually paid much less than documented workers. For example, while 2/3 of undocumented people earn less than twice the minimum wage, only one-third of undocumented people do. This is not enough money on which to live in the U.S. Undocumented workers also face a higher risk of abuse than do documented workers. Because of their illegal situation, undocumented people are much less likely to report abuse. One must also consider the corporate view, the fact that U.S. workers get paid too much, and hiring undocumented workers keeps labor costs down. Undocumented workers are less likely to make demands such as better benefits. The companies often justify the hiring of undocumented workers by pointing out the high wages that U.S. workers earn. While no company outrightly talks about hiring undocumented workers, companies do complain about workers' unions that guarantee living wages to their members. In 2007, the Delphi plant that closed in Detroit used the justification that it could no longer afford to pay the $42 an hour that U.S. workers earn. Of course, they neglected to point out that what really bothered them was the workers were earning a wage that they could live on. The difference in wages is not the only way in which hiring undocumented workers benefits a company's bottom line. Companies can save on benefits too. It is estimated that it costs a company between 50 to 70% less to employ an undocumented worker than it does to employ a legal worker. The immigrants also have rights and views. Undocumented workers are necessary for the economy to keep function because they keep labor costs down, and the savings are passed on to the consumers in the form of lowered retail prices. Undocumented workers take jobs legal citizens do not want to do, and undocumented workers have basic human rights despite their legal status. The American Farm Bureau says that without undocumented workers, the United States would lose $5 to $9 billion a year in fruit, vegetable, and flower production, and up to 20% of production would go overseas. So not only do undocumented workers pay taxes into institutions like Social Security, but they also are vital to keeping jobs in the U.S. and keeping prices to consumers down. Finally, despite their legal status, undocumented workers are supposed to have their human rights protected just as any other human being does, as guaranteed in the UN Convention of Human Rights. This does not mean that they have a right to legality. Rather, it means they have a right to respect and fair treatment just by virtue of being a human being. In conclusion, the issue of whether or not to hire undocumented workers is much more than just a labor decision. It also includes important legal and ethical components. Such issues include a consideration of who gets hurt, who benefits from the employment of undocumented workers. The corporate view of the hiring of undocumented workers focuses on the benefits of the company of having a low-paid, non-unionized workforce. The immigrants' rights view on the hiring of undocumented workers focuses on the working conditions of workers as well as on the contribution of undocumented workers to the United States economy. Thank you.